The intake problem that's stealing your evenings and undermining your outcomes. Well, I almost missed a critical diagnosis because my patient was too groggy from not sleeping, and she skipped 2 pages of my old intake form, and I don't blame her. It was 2003, and she has this mysterious infectious disease with legs burning so badly, she had to get up in the middle of the night and plunge her feet in a bucket of ice water. Terrible. So many possible triggers. She has fatigue, she has brain fog, and she has a searing leg pain. And I did the best I could. Weeks went by, and she wasn't getting better as I'd hoped. And it turns out she, in addition to all this other stuff, she had this severe gut problem that she never mentioned. Why? Because I didn't notice it, and she didn't bring it up. But on the abdominal section, page 14 of my 20-page form, she stopped. She became overwhelmed. She skipped it. And with all the problems she had and everything I was paying attention to, I missed it. I'm not proud of that. It's 2003. I was just getting started. Gut dysfunction was destroying her immune system, which meant no matter what I did for our autoimmune puzzle, she wasn't going to heal. So I had to go through months of records, piece it together backwards and clues. And I should have had this information on day one, but now I had to rethink her entire treatment from scratch with this idea, now that I knew that her gut was not right, in mind. And that's when I understood the real problem. The more comprehensive your intake needs to be for good clinical outcomes, the more your system will punish you for it if it's not right. And if you're a functional medicine practitioner who actually cares about getting to the root cause, you are getting punished the hardest. Your intake form isn't broken because it's too long or too detailed. It's broken because it was designed by PhD researchers in functional medicine, not for the kind of real-world medicine you practice. Functional medicine requires comprehensive, multi-system, real-time data capture, and generic old-school EHRs were built for 15-minute sick visits. You might spend an hour or two doing a deep dive root cause investigation, and that mismatch is why you're staying late, your staff is drowning, and why critical details keep falling through the gaps. Today, I'm showing you exactly why current intake systems fail functional medicine practitioners and what intake actually looks like when it's built for the kind of medicine we practice. Why intake keeps failing you. Let's start why this problem exists and why you can't template or train your way out of it. Functional medicine broke intake forms. Here's why that's not your problem to solve. In functional medicine, story is a medicine. You need, and this is a lot of stuff, family history, past medical history, lifestyle, environmental exposures, childhood illness, sleep patterns, digestive function, hormonal rhythm, stress response. You need the timeline, you need the triggers, you need the context, because in root cause medicine, the story tells you where to start. And if you're good, really good at it, it tells you about the happy ending. So practices do what seems logical. They need a lot of information, so they build these massive intake forms, 15 pages, 20 pages. And when patients do them, they get overwhelmed. They skip sections, they contradict themselves, they leave critical information blank because by page 12, they please just want it to be over. And that's exactly what happened with my patient with the burning legs. She was super sick. It's not like she wasn't committed, but she was tired. Then you go digital with a generic EHR and you think maybe that'll be better, but it's the same problem. It's just a different medium. Now, instead of paper fatigue, you have click fatigue. Patients toggle drop-down menus, same as before, but they don't match their experience. And the system wants you to give a quick, easy answer, a binary answer to a really complex question. And then you walk in the room with the patient who just spent 45 minutes. You know how happy they are, right? On forms that they hate. And now you have to go through that same awful process yourself, asking them questions. And still you don't have what you need. So here's what that actually costs you. Traditional forms ask the same question multiple times in different sections. The patient answers those same questions multiple times and a little frustrated. And you still don't know the timeline triggers or severity. Then someone has to manually score each section, add them up, compare severity, interpret it. And for me, I used to do that. 10 or 15 minutes of really hard brain drain per patient. And that's before you even start charting the patient visit. And that's why patients, they'll skip sections on paper forms, or they'll speed click, I call it. They'll speed click through the generic digital forms, and they're not really honest or accurate. And you don't know what you're missing until you're in the room, or worse, like with the burning legs, until you're not getting the results you want, and then you have to backtrack, and that's a nightmare. Intake isn't just about collecting information. It's about collecting the right information in the right order without gaps. And that requires a completely different architecture than what most practices are running. What intelligent intake actually looks like. So, what's the alternative? What does intake look like when it's built for the functional medicine practice from the ground up? This is what intake looks like when it's designed by a functional medicine doctor who got fed up with the old way. When a patient books in our practice and they're a new patient, they get a link to an online intake that asks questions the way a doctor would ask them in person. That makes sense, right? How can we help you today? Anything else you'd like to tell me about your story? When did it begin? Has it increased or decreased? Those kinds of questions. Everybody knows them. Then it goes through the history, family history, past medical history, lifestyle, medications, supplements, and then, and this is the sweet spot, into a very detailed questionnaire about specific problems. Not only problems currently happening, but what's happened in the past and how has it affected you over the years. And that's what builds the full functional medicine picture. Here's where it gets smart. In the background, the system is running validated questionnaires from the medical literature. Depression screening, like the Beck Depression Inventory questions, hormonal evaluation, the menopause rating scale, cardiovascular risk, all the things derived from the medical literature. And those questions make sense in their fields, but they especially make sense in functional medicine. Instead of having the patient complete these 5 or 10 different assessments, the questions are stacked on each other, so the same question is never asked more than once. And every answer is applied to every relevant functional category. Brilliant. The system also asks follow-up questions in the areas that matter most based on what the patient flags. If they flag digestive, it goes deeper into gut, food, bowel problems. If they flag hormonal, cycle history, stress response, those things. So there's conditional answers. The patient only answers questions relevant to their specific case. And here's what changes everything. By the time the patient clicks submit, the system has already scored and graphed their functional systems. It's already done. Cardiovascular, structural, endocrine, infectious, mental health, gastrointestinal, all of them. You open their chart and you can instantly see graphic data and scores prioritizing which systems are the most challenged. You can tell right away where the highest risk areas are and where the questioning and ultimately intervention should start. No manual scoring, no adding up columns, maybe a little, no guessing. No guessing. You know where to start the conversation before you walk into the room. It's amazing. The system also, it builds the written history automatically in both medical language and patient language. For instance, the patient asks, do you have heartburn? And then it will say in the medical record, patient reports reflux. They say brain fog, chart says cognitive. No transition layer, no translation problem on your end. No extra charting step. And because every field is required to go to the next step, you don't have any gaps. No skip pages, no missing sections. And no finding out on visit 4, the patient has a gut problem that they never mentioned, right? If you're thinking, this sounds exactly like what I need, but switching systems feels terrifying, I understand. I've switched a few. Most practitioners have been burned before. They've spent months learning a new EHR, and they end up in the same situation with a different tool. But that's why we built Esprit, to be self-onboarding. You can start a free trial, load in a few test patients, see how the intake actually works before you commit to anything. There's no payment required. There's no migration pressure. The link is in the description if you want to see it for yourself. What this makes possible. Let me show you what actually happens in practice when intake works the way it should and what it means for patients and your life. We see 3 to 4 new patients every day, and I work 2.5 days a week because of it. And I'm never charting past 6 p.m. Here's how. We had a teenager come in recently with an ADHD diagnosis. Patients wanted a neurological workup. His parents were into it. But the intake flagged something different, a severe GI problem. So we put the neuro referral in, but we ran allergy testing. We adjusted his diet. We added probiotics and enzymes. We used some botanicals to address his bacterial and fungal overgrowth. And 2 months later, much to everyone's surprise, his ADHD symptoms had completely resolved, completely. Eventually, he lost 50 pounds, and he became a different kid entirely. So, if he'd gone through the conventional system, he would have been put on stimulants, very likely, and the root cause would never have been addressed. Our intake caught what mattered most on day 1. Menopausal patient comes in. She's got hot flashes. insomnia, anxiety, depression, the usual, the classic presentation. But the intake showed her GI system was compromised. Well, why does that matter? Well, in functional medicine, gut function is huge. It controls hormone detox, right? So if you just treat the hot flashes without addressing the gut, you could make her feel better, but you're not fixing the root of the problem. The intake gives us the full map before the first visit even started, because intake isn't the bottleneck anymore. I mean, you think about 2 or 3 hours versus 15 seconds where you can read you a graph. We're able to see 3 to 4 new patients a day, which you couldn't possibly do well with the old style. The first visit isn't 30 minutes of clarifying intake forms, it's clinical conversation. Timeline mapping, like, did that really start when you were 13? And treatment planning, and the patient feels heard. You're not going through a bunch of questions, you're actually talking to the patient. I'm not frustrated going in, and I'm not staying late to finish charting because the system already built the written history. I work 2.5 days a week, seeing patients, and spend the rest of my time on the parts of business that I enjoy. I'm studying new things and growing. I don't chart at midnight. I don't resent my practice or my staff. My patients get better outcomes because I actually have the information I need to treat the root cause from day one. And that's not theoretical. That's how we've run our practice. And it starts with intake that was actually built for the kind of medicine we practice. I got good news. Your intake form isn't your fault. It's a tool that was never designed for what you're trying to do. When intake works the way it should, asking the right questions, scoring automatically, building the chart in real time, and giving you a system map before you walk in the room, functional medicine becomes sustainable, not just clinically, professionally, personally, and for me, joyfully. Because you didn't leave insurance medicine to become a better data entry clerk. You didn't. You left to actually understand your patient's entire story, and you deserve a system that makes that possible. If this video hits home, there's one more I want you to watch. I really recommend it. It's called Why I Built an AI System 22 years ago that doctors are just now realizing they need. It's the story behind why this system exists and why it took the rest of the industry 2 decades to catch up. I'll link it here. Go watch it, and I'll see you there.